On September 12, 1683, the fate of Western Europe rested on a single forested ridge overlooking Vienna. Beneath the canopy of the Wienerwald, 150,000 Ottoman soldiers encircled the battered capital of the Habsburg Empire. Inside the city, desperate defenders were eating horses, cats, and leather boots. Their walls were crumbling under relentless subterranean explosions. 2 months of grueling siege had reduced the grand capital to a bleeding fortress on the brink of total collapse. Had the city fallen, the road to the heart of Europe lay entirely undefended. But almost no one expected what emerged from the woods at dawn. Who was willing to risk total destruction to save a rival empire? In the summer of 1683, Grand Vizier Kara Mustafa Pasha led the largest Ottoman army gathered in a generation straight toward the heart of Holy Roman territory. His target was Vienna, the jewel of Christendom and the strategic gateway to Central Europe. The Habsburg Emperor Leopold I fled his capital, leaving Count Ernst Rüdiger von Starhemberg with just 11,000 soldiers and 5,000 civilian volunteers. They were facing an invading force nearly 10 times their size. By mid-July, the Ottoman host had completely surrounded the city, raising a vast sea of green and red tents that stretched to the horizon. Why did Kara Mustafa refuse to launch a direct, all-out assault on the weakened city walls? The Ottoman commander wanted the immense treasures of Vienna intact, intending to claim the city's wealth for himself and the Sultan. Instead of destroying the city with immediate artillery barrages, he ordered his elite sappers to dig a network of deep trenches toward the ramparts. These military miners worked around the clock under the cover of night and earthworks. They tunneled beneath the thick stone walls, packing subterranean chambers with hundreds of barrels of black powder. What was the defense's response to an invisible enemy beneath their feet? Inside the besieged city, the situation grew catastrophic by the day. Starhemberg organized countermining teams, civilians and soldiers who sat in pitch-black cellars listening to the rhythmic thuds of Ottoman pickaxes through the bedrock. When a tunnel was detected, Austrian miners dug counter passages to intercept the enemy, engaging in brutal hand-to-hand combat in tight, airless earthen shafts, lit only by flickering oil lamps. Yet despite their bravery, the Ottoman sappers breached the outer defensive works one by one. Starhemberg reported to the emperor in a smuggled dispatch that his forces were running out of gunpowder, clean water, and living men. Dysentery and typhus swept through the crowded streets. By early September, the city's outer wall, the Berg Bastion, was shattered into rubble. Less than 4,000 defenders remained capable of holding a musket. How could help arrive before the final breach was blown? Hundreds of miles away, an unprecedented military alliance had been forged. Recognizing that the fall of Vienna would endanger all of Central Europe, King John III, Sobieski of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, honored his treaty obligations and marched south with his royal army. Joining forces with German princes, including Prince Charles of Lorraine and the young Elector of Bavaria, Sobieski assembled a relief force of approximately 80,000 men. But time was rapidly running out. The Allied army had to cross the Danube River and navigate the dense, treacherous terrain of the Vienna woods without alarming the besieging army. The terrain proved to be a nightmarish tactical obstacle. The relief force was forced to haul heavy cannons baggage trains, and thousands of war horses up steep, muddy forest trails in total darkness. Ottoman scouts had reported the approaching force, but Kara Mustafa stubbornly refused to lift the siege or build strong defensive lines facing the woods, convinced his subterranean mines would breach Vienna's inner walls first. On the morning of September 12th, the Ottoman sappers detonated a massive mine beneath the Berg bastion, blowing a 40-meter gap in the wall. Ottoman janissaries surged forward toward the breach, shouting war cries as Starhemberg's dying garrison fought desperately in hand-to-hand combat over the rubble. Then, from the heights of the Kahlenberg mountain, the Allied signal rockets burst into the dawn sky. The shock among the Ottoman ranks was absolute. Charles of Lorraine launched the initial attack on the left flank, driving Ottoman forces out of the downhill villages along the Danube. Heavy infantry engagements raged across the rugged vineyards and broken hillsides for over 10 hours under a scorching sun. The fighting was fierce, agonizing, and confused. Ottoman troops fought back with fanatical resolve, keeping their main force focused on breaching the city walls while attempting to hold off the relief army on the slopes. By 4 in the afternoon, Allied infantry had secured the lower foot of the ridge, establishing a solid staging area for the cavalry. High on the ridge, 18,000 Christian horsemen lined up in formation, their battle standards fluttering in the smoke-choked air. At the center of this formidable line stood 3,000 Winged Hussars, the elite heavy cavalry of Poland, clad in steel armor with wooden frames bearing eagle feathers mounted to their saddles. These elite riders were armed with 5-meter-long lances designed to outreach any infantry pike. At 5:15 p.m., King John Sobieski gave the order. A single trumpet call echoed across the mountain, followed by the deafening thunder of 72,000 hooves. What does 18,000 heavy cavalry charging downhill actually sound like? Modern military historians, including Dr. Richard Brzezinski, describe the charge as an overwhelming psychological and physical avalanche. The massive cavalry formation picked up momentum, moving from a trot to a full gallop as they descended the steep terrain directly into the flank of the exhausted Ottoman army. The impact was catastrophic. The long wooden lances of the Winged Hussars shattered through the front lines of the Ottoman infantry and cavalry, crushing entire ranks in seconds. The eerie whistling noise created by the wooden feather frames added to the terrifying sensory overload. Panic tore through the Ottoman camps like wildfire. Kara Mustafa tried to rally his personal guard around the sacred banner of the Prophet, but the momentum of the charge was unstoppable. Within minutes, the Ottoman defensive lines dissolved into a desperate, chaotic rout. The defenders inside Vienna, witnessing the charge from the battered ramparts, threw open the city gates and joined the attack, swarming out to trap the retreating enemy. Kara Mustafa fled the field, leaving behind his personal tent, the royal treasury, thousands of tents, and immense piles of military equipment. Over 15,000 Ottoman soldiers fell on the battlefield that day, compared to around 4,000 Allied casualties. The siege that was meant to open the heart of Europe to Ottoman expansion ended in a matter of hours. What was the true cost of Kara Mustafa's ambition? 3 months later, upon his arrival in Belgrade, the defeated Grand Vizier was executed by strangulation with a silk cord on the orders of Sultan Mehmed IV for losing the army and the siege. For the Ottoman Empire, the defeat marked the absolute peak and the beginning of a permanent decline in European expansion. The Battle of Vienna reshaped the geopolitics of the continent forever, securing the Habsburg monarchy and setting the stage for the liberation of Hungary and the Balkans in the decades that followed. On a fog-choked morning, 150,000 Ottoman soldiers held the fate of Europe in their hands. They were wrong about what mattered. The grand army that sought to conquer the West had been crushed by the greatest cavalry charge in human history, forever leaving its mark on the Wienerwald, where the fate of Western Europe rested on a single forested ridge.